This is Steve Michelotti from Azure Government Engineering. I'm joined here today by Zach Kramer, lead of Azure Government Engineering. And we decided that what we wanted to do for this next one is to have a conversation about the data science virtual machine on Azure Gov. I know as you and I have been sitting here and having various side conversations, we've thought to ourselves, there's a lot you can do with that DSVM.
No, for sure. So this is a cool graphic about all the things you can do with data science VM. So there's lots of different tools and languages and things like that. And you really, when you think of the data science VM, you obviously think of data science, right? So there's tools to do machine learning, training of models, different things like that. And we'll take a look at that. And so it really gives you a lot of opportunity and flexibility about what you can do. And when we're kind of talking about this, we said, hey, isn't there like a top 10 list of things that you can do with the data science VM? And so they do. They indeed publish this. It's on their docs, and you can see here. And there's lots of things about how you can use RStudio and Jupyter Notebooks and things like this. And I think you've done that before, Steve, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll take a look at that. But when we were really talking about this, I think there's more that you can do with it beyond the top 10. And so one of the things that we talked about is, of course, for people in government, there are data scientists out there that do a lot of things, whether it's statistics, whether it's planning, modeling of ships in the Department of Defense, or veterans healthcare, or different things like that. There's a lot of data science work. But there's also some interesting things you can do with from an IT pro or an IT admin. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think that's a hugely important point here. I mean, we talk about instances like from an IT admin standpoint, people ask for Cloud Shell quite often because they can't install tools on their machine. Well, these tools are already installed on the data science virtual machine. And as we look at some of these other roles, like developers, for example, we do Azure Government Hackfest events. Well, the data science virtual machine provides a perfect environment. Even if you're not going to do data science, provides a great environment for developers.
Yeah, and we've seen this also even with database administrators or kind of anyone who wants to get started quickly to be able to have Azure tools at their disposal, to be able to have development environments, whether it's a Linux or a Windows environment, and to be able to kind of get started with using Azure and using Azure Government. So I think we'll take a look at a few of these scenarios, and why don't we start with the data science one?
All right, sounds good. Okay, so here I am in my Azure Government portal, and even before we start showing the data science virtual machine, we should probably do demo number 0, which is actually the experience of provisioning it. So there's a few different ways to do it, but the easiest way I found is just to click Create a Resource, and if you just search for DSVM or even just data science, we'll try to spell it correctly, we'll see the results come up. And a couple of interesting points here. Right at the beginning, you're going to see that we have a couple of different flavors of it. If you want Windows, great, choose this one. If you want Linux, okay, that's also a choice. So that's one key takeaway right from the very beginning is you can select what platform you want your data science virtual machine to be on. So I'm just going to click in here and we'll do Gov DSVM, and I've already asked for Ubuntu, and we'll just give it a username here, and I'm just going to put a quick and dirty password in. Let's see if I can actually click the same password the same way twice. Looks like I did. I can pick my subscription, and I can create a new resource group, DSVM, RG, and we're good to go. Okay, now I've selected my location as Virginia. Now the next takeaway here is I can select my size of what I want my DSVM to be. So I might just be a developer, a lowly developer that wants to do some testing, and I can't, spend too much money. I can make that choice here. I can also be a data scientist that I need a lot of computing power. So I can flip right over here to GPU. Let me flip to all disks, and you can see that we have the NV series, N series, and then the NC series. So a lot of choice for, do you want Windows? Do you want Linux? Do you want CPU? Do you want GPU? A lot of flexibility in how that data science virtual machine is provisioned.
Yeah, now one of the things I've seen is that a lot of customers, and we'll talk a little bit about this more in a minute, but when I need to install a tool on my desktop or I need to do any of these things, it takes a lot of work to get through the right approval board and to get the right version in and to do all of those things. Having this available is great. But it doesn't necessarily grant you access to things on your network or things like this. So this is a great playground, a nice sandbox, but you would still, when you want to finally incorporate it or bring it into some sort of production or data access scenario, you would then could use your express route connections, could mount it on your VNets and do things like that to enable yourself to have access in a secure manner. So really, to me, it's the best of both worlds, where it's giving you a sandbox that you can play in, that you can do a lot of work and you can learn and you can refine skills and do that unfettered, and then be able to bring that into your kind of secure and compliant environment as you go forward.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So we know this takes a couple of minutes to provision. So I'm going to go into my Martha Stewart Quick Bake Oven here, and I'm just going to bring up a DSVM that I've already provisioned. Now, this particular instance that I'm in right now is an Ubuntu machine, and I actually have provisioned this on GPU. And I've started the Jupyter notebook that's just running locally on the machine. And right off the bat, you see examples of some frameworks that come pre-installed. So I can click into, for example, this folder for deep learning frameworks, and I can see TensorFlow and CNTK and Caffe, and I even created my own folder here for Keras, and I can see some of these notebooks I already have created. Now, what I have right here is a Keras notebook that's using TensorFlow, and it's using the MNIST handwriting sample, which is sort of like the hello world for data science, computer vision. And you can see some of these examples here. I can load the data right in, and you can see right here that this is 60,000 images, 28 by 28 pixels. And I'm just going to display the first few so we can prove to people that we have it here. So there's 5. There's 0 and there's 4. So 504. Then we can see a sampling of the labels. So sure enough, 504. And this is a very straightforward notebook where I can come in here and I can see the shape of my data. Maybe I want 10,000 of the 60,000 images to be my my validation set versus my training set and that sort of thing. And to build a deep learning tool here, it's really come down to these couple lines of codes here where I have a couple layers in my network. I can specify my activation function, ReLU, softmax, whatever the case may be. I can say what metrics I care about, which in this case is accuracy. And I can do a little bit of pre-processing to reshape my array here. Now down here, I come in this line of code for fit. This is where we actually train the model. So what I'm going to do here is I am actually going to run this entire notebook. So I'm going to come up to cell and I'll say run all. And one interesting thing you see is when you train this particular well-established model on CPU, it takes a couple of minutes to run. But because I have this deployed on a GPU machine, oh, you can see it's running right there, and I did 5 iterations, and it would finish in seconds. And instead of waiting for 2 or 3 minutes, it actually finished in just a few seconds. Again, because I am running on GPU for this particular instance, I can model my results. I can see the accuracy and loss is quite high over those 5 iterations. And then at the end, I can see my accuracy was 98%. So that's just a very quick demo to show how we can do deep learning with computer vision model on the data science virtual machine using established frameworks like TensorFlow running on GPU.
Yeah, and one of the things there is that this is obviously the purpose of the data science VM, and so it's great. So when you covered a lot of different frameworks, a lot of different tools, a lot of different things that you would have to install and have access to, and so to be able to just spin that VM up you go. And again, having been in a lot of government entities, whether it's state, local, or it's federal, or different things like that, having to go through and say, I need to deploy this framework, I now need to deploy this set of tools, just to begin playing with and seeing what you can create and what you can come up with. This gives you an opportunity to really accelerate that and have that very quickly at your disposal, and it opens up a lot of opportunities.
Definitely.
So it really is, it's a very cool thing.
And some of these tools that comes pre-installed are not trivial to install yourself. So the fact that it comes preloaded, already installed, huge time saver.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to install them all on your workstations. You could also, as we said before, take this virtual machine, add it to your VNets, make it accessible in a way that you want to be able to run production, to be able to look at production data or touch that. You can even move it inside of your network boundary.
Yep.
So it creates options.
So that was just a quick look at one bit of functionality for data scientists. Let's go to our next example, which is what it might look like for an IT pro or admin.
Okay, great. So if we're looking at the IT admin, they may not be pulling up TensorFlow and Keras and doing all that stuff. But what I have here is a Windows DSVM that I went and created, same way you looked at creating the Linux VM. And basically all I've done is I have installed nothing on this. This is vanilla. This is out of the box. I didn't have to install anything. So we're going to do a couple of quick things. You mentioned before, Steve, about being able to access the Cloud Shell and being able to do command line configuration operations basically of Azure without having to install tooling. And so the Data Science VM gives you a great quick way to do this if you want to begin playing around with what are some scripts going to look like? How am I going to do my automation? Having been in these environments and done things, you're always tinkering a bit, right? Trying to figure out the best flow and best thing. So we bring this up. First thing we're going to do is we're just going to type AZ to open up the CLI. And when we look at this, we're going to see quickly, there's our Azure command line. Now, I didn't have to install an SDK. I didn't have to do anything. It's off we go. Now we're going to connect to Azure Government. We're going to do AZ cloud set name Azure US Government. Okay. Now that we are setting our environment to connect to the Azure Government, then we're going to do AZ login. It's going to pop up and ask me for my signing in here. So we're going to sign in with my account. It's going to ask me for my password. Okay. All good. We can go ahead and close this window out. And now we're logged in. So now we can say AZ account locations. And so as we look at this, we'll see these are, whoops, I typed that one wrong, but it actually gave me a nice little tool here where it said, hey, maybe you meant this. So now if we do AZ account list locations, and I can even say output table. It's going to give me a nicely formatted table of all the locations. And so this will show that I'm connected to Azure Government. You can see our 6 Azure Government regions, and off we go.
And I always feel obligated here to tell people we do not publish the exact longitude and latitude. These are not real coordinates, but it does drive home the point that we're using the same Azure CLI that normal Azure commercial users use.
Yeah. Now, as I look at what's on this VM, I've also got PowerShell, so I can do a quick login -Azure RM account -envi, if I can spell environment.
Tab.
You got to do it, earn it. Government. Okay. And I can log in here. You'll notice the same thing. It's asking me for my account. Okay. I type in my password. And now I'm logged in. And so I can say Azure RM location. And similar to what we saw in the CLI, I'm now connected. And this from here, I could do any number of PowerShell commands or anything I want to do to be able to do environments. And even it pre-installed, I've got the ISE environment if I want to be able to debug my PowerShell or things like that. And I've even got Visual Studio. So one of the first times very early on when I was working with a customer, they asked for some help. And we said, hey, we'll help you move some websites. And we said, you needed to copy some files, right? And so they had never done any scripting or never done any SDK work. And so we said, hey, I need to install Visual Studio. And so immediately they said, well, I have to install Visual Studio, I have to go get this approval from these people to then whitelist it to enable it to be installed on my workstation, and our work completely stopped. That was going to take 2 days. There wasn't a whole lot else we could do at that point, so we took a break. Had to come back another time once that was installed. Had we had this at the time, we would have been able to basically pop in. I could have showed him everything end-to-end how to run it, and then once that approval was done, he could have brought that code in and been able to execute it. And so this is where the power really is, that I can get up and running quickly. I can do the things I need to get unblocked and be able to move forward. So even for an IT admin, there's a whole lot of power baked into the Data Science VM for you to use inside of your government environment.
And I think one of the key takeaway here is that you can do what environment you are comfortable with. So if you prefer the Azure CLI or if you prefer PowerShell, great, it's your choice. You want to use straight command line or you want to use PowerShell ISE, great, it's your choice. Because all these tools are available, it's really the choice is yours.
Yeah, because I even think about when I have to set up a new laptop and you got to bring down all the tools and get everything configured. Exactly. I just loaded this up. I actually provisioned it on an airplane and was able to start logging in. Right. So it's great.
Yes. Okay. Now you've been talking about the IT Pro.
Yep.
Although I just see that you just launched Visual Studio. So that's actually a good segue for us to talk about sort of our third persona here, which is the developer.
Yep.
Okay, so here I am back in my data science virtual machine. And so we're going to do a quick demo from a developer perspective. I'm on an Ubuntu machine, and we're going to build a quick Node.js application, and we'll deploy it to Azure. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a directory called node demo app, and let's cd into that directory. And I'm going to I'll just run git init to initialize a Git repository that's local on this machine. And now let's open this directory in VS Code, which we all know and love, Microsoft's flagship open source editor. And let's come in here and let's add a new file. Of course, it's Node.js, so we're obligated to call it server.js. And what I'm going to do here is let's just make this window a little bit bigger here. And I am going to paste in a snippet of code. Okay, so now I've got some code in here. Hello, Azure Government DSVM from Node.js. Okay, this is good enough for me. Now, you saw me run a couple lines on the terminal. I'm actually run some more lines on the terminal, but I'm going to do the terminal from within VS Code. But this is still a bash shell here. So we're just going to say git add dot, and now we'll say git commit, and we'll just give it a comment, initial check-in. So notice the Git client was already installed on this DSVM. So I've committed it locally, but now I want to push it to a remote repository somewhere. So here I am in my Azure Government portal, and I already have this blank Node Gov app deployed. You can see the URL is right here, Node Gov app, azurewebsites.us. And just to prove it to you, there it is right there. Let's refresh. You can see this is the blank blue screen that we have. This is where we want to deploy. Now notice that this has a git clone URL, which we can copy to our clipboard here. And now we come back, we can say git add remote Azure. And we paste in that URL here, and we've added a remote. Oh, and I can see I just made a mistake right there. I mixed up my words, so let's fix that real quick. Instead of git add remote, it's git remote add. Let's make sure we spell it right. We'll call it Azure, and we'll paste that right in there. Now I think it's going to be happier with me this time. Okay, cool. Now we'll just simply run git push Azure master. It's going to prompt me for my password. And we're just seeing an example of automatic functionality in Azure Government where hasn't even run the Azure CLI. I'm just running Git commands, but I'm pushing this up to Azure, and it's detecting this is a Node.js app, and it's actually doing a CI/CD pipeline where we're doing continuous deployment. So let's check that out real quick. Let's go and refresh this blue screen that we just saw. And what we can see is, sure enough, we've deployed this Node app to Azure Government. And just to make sure we're proving this to everyone, let's come in here and say version 2. And now instead of using the command line inside of Visual Studio Code, we'll just use integrated functionality. So we'll say changed message, and we'll commit it locally. And then we will once again say push to Azure, which we previously did on the command line. It's going to prompt me for my password one more time, and it's going to run the same process. So again, these VS Code is installed, Git client is installed, the Azure CLI is installed, and because all these things are installed, you can see how quickly and easily it is for me to have a development process here where I can check in code and have a CI/CD pipeline deploy up to Azure, and I can come in here and refresh and see, yep, version 2 just got deployed to Azure Government, which we can see right here, .us, this is websites running in Azure Government. So just another quick example of the type of development tools that are available on the DSVM for the developers.
Yeah, that was really cool to see the developer stuff, but let's go back. We talked about one other persona, which was the database administrator. And so on here, the first thing you can see is from even a SQL Server perspective, I've got SQL Server Management Studio installed, so I can connect to databases and do any of that work. But what's actually a little more interesting is that I have other tools like our Studio installed so that I could connect in and begin to run, our code, whether it's on SQL or in other places. I have, as you said, our cross-platform editor in VS Code. And then I want to show just one that was kind of fun. So every month, the Power BI team provides an update to Power BI Desktop, and they publish out a PBIX file with the latest samples that highlight all the new features that they just did in the latest release. And again, in certain environments, if I want to get that latest release down, I may have to get something approved, get it installed on my desktop, but I want to be able to play with that and experience those new features and see if they actually meet my needs for what I'm looking to do. And so here on GitHub, we have the Power BI samples. And you can see here they have each month. There's a 2019 one. And so we can actually grab the March 2019 one. I can download it here. And you'll see, again, I haven't installed anything, didn't install Power BI Studio. Desktop, it says, do you want to go ahead and open with it from Firefox?
So it's smart enough to already associate that application with that file.
Off we go. So we say we're going to go ahead and download and run. It launches Power BI Desktop. And as you see it initializing the model with the PBIX file. And here we go. I've got interactive maps. I've got charts, I've got graphs. I can begin drilling into any of these things. I can click and interact with the data and begin exploring the features that they would talk about in their blog or do anything like this. And so it's really cool to see how from, quickly I can get to running functionality in ways that might not have been available to me at other times if I had to go get sign off and do things like that.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So as we look at the data science virtual machine from a higher level, certainly it's really good at data science and all these tools we have installed. But as we think about it and as we talk to our customers, it's really a lot more than just a tool for data science. We could call it the IT Pro or Admin virtual machine, or the Azure Developer virtual machine, or the Azure Database Guru virtual machine. It really has something for everyone.
Yeah, no, and all those capabilities allowing you to get up and running quickly. I mean, part of the promise of cloud computing and all of these things are being able to get up and running quickly, but you still have to learn things. You have to be able to try them out. You have to be able to experience them. And so being able to get and do that quickly is key to being able to unlock the power that we're using here with Azure Government.
Definitely. Okay, this has been Steve Michelotti with Zach Kramer of Azure Government Engineering talking about the data science virtual machine on Azure Government. Thanks for watching.